Hey there, everyone, and welcome to the UkeStuff channel and the UkeStuff Podcast. This is a special episode that I am recording in response to some questions that were left on the UkeStuff YouTube channel. And it is a long message from Dennis, who is from the Netherlands, who had asked me some very specific questions about ukuleles and school ukuleles, and I wanted to take the time to answer them. YouTube is an awful place for communication back and forth. If anybody's ever tried to reply to a reply, it's a mess. They don't show up in your feed, you don't see them, and it's really easy to lose track of that. It's also hard to thread messages. So with that said, I wanted to record this special podcast episode, and I'm just going to go point by point for the questions that Dennis asked. So here's the first one. As he said, do all of your students play on a TUSL? So that means a flight travel soprano long neck, so soprano body, concert neck, or do some also play on a TUS, which is just a standard flight soprano? And he says that he has students, some that are larger than the others. And the answer is we bought 690 flight TUSL models just like this one. Now, if you're listening to this on the radio, I'm holding up a flight long neck soprano ukulele. And we went with that. And I wanted to talk about that because there are a couple things that happened there that I thought are interesting that would be worth sharing at this point. In a couple years out, I think I can share them without getting anybody in trouble. We had two final choices for the instruments we were going to choose. We were either going to go with outdoor ukulele sopranos, which were about $100 each at the time, or we were going to go with flight. We contacted Outdoor Ukulele, and they literally told us, we have no interest in producing 690 ukuleles for your school district, because we were buying them for every of our elementary schools. Every one of them a set of 40. 4 would be left-handed, the other 36 would be right-handed, and they said we can't do it. We cannot stop our production for several months to make all those ukuleles. We were floored by that, but we understand it. Still was crazy to hear. So flight became our other choice. Now you can say, how come you didn't want to go with like a Macala Dolphin, or you didn't want to go with an Acklot, or you didn't want to go with an Enya? Ultimately, our schools are not humidified at all. And we are in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities area. So not as far north as you can go in the United States, but within a couple hours of drive of being outside of the United States to the north to Canada. And in the winter, our humidity levels in our schools is below that of the Sahara Desert. So even laminate ukuleles end up with sprouted sharp fret ends and other things. And we also wanted instruments that would be durable and strong. Some of those other instruments, like the Macala Dolphin, for example, are strong, but you still deal with weather-related issues. And it gets really bad in the spring, incidentally, because the weather will change from one day being 30 degrees to the next day being 70 degrees. And particularly with wood neck instruments, all your instruments just go wacky out of tune for a while. They just can't handle that change because the interior climates are not controlled. So we wanted to look at synthetic ukuleles. Outdoor ukulele was like a dream bid at the cost, because I still do think that the outdoor ukulele is the most rugged ukulele in the market. Now, since that time, Flight has introduced the Ultra Travel, and with that in mind, the Ultra Travel might have been our choice instead had it existed at the time. But it didn't, so today I might point you towards also considering the Flight Ultra Travel. That said, I teach ukulele mainly to 5th graders. And 5th graders are a big range of body size, as are middle school years here in the United States. So we're talking students that are generally 10 or 11 years old. 11 is really on the old side, and there are some, I suppose, that are 9 turning 10 at some point. So your body sizes change, and you get kids that are literally taller than I am. I'm 5'10", so there are kids that are taller than I am, and there are kids that are not, that are very short. And so with that, change, we also want to make sure that we took care of our taller students too that have larger hands. The concert scale neck is 15 inches compared to the soprano's 13, but the difference in the frets isn't so much that a smaller student can't play it. But the 13 inch, and on the flight, by the way, the flight soprano isn't actually 13 inch. I think it's more like 14. So the flight sopranos themselves are a little bit longer than usual. But that said, the flight sopranos, or any soprano, is smaller for those larger hands. So the concert is our ideal point for older elementary. If you were going to be teaching younger elementary, I'd say sure, soprano is fine. With the outdoor ukulele, we would have had to say soprano because that we weren't going to be doing tenors. That gets a little crazy with beginning young players. The concert neck was perfect for us. Even the chord changing, there are chord change devices, and I've written about those, made videos about those. They fit perfectly on the flight concert neck. It doesn't matter whether it's the concert body or the flight soprano, the TUSL. Those chord changers fit on the concert neck perfectly fine too, without any problem or modification. So the scale of the neck is good for pretty much everybody. It's not too large, it's not too small. It's that old Goldilocks thing, if you know the Goldilocks story, where, this bed's too big, this bed's too small, why this bed is just right. The concert feels just right in education, at least with the students that I teach 5th grade, and then even those that I taught in middle school and above. That goes to another plea that I wish that Outdoor Ukulele made a concert, and I also wish that the Flight Ultra came in a long neck version as well. Although I've been told from a number of sources that sales of plastic ukuleles are way down. And I think sales of ukuleles in general are on the dip at the moment, which is fine. It is the way that it is. So ultimately, long answer to a simple question. Do all your students play on a TUSL? The answer is yes, unless they bring their own from home, which they are allowed to do. They don't have to do. And this, again, the instrument that I'm holding up is a Flight TUSL. Kids, and I will also be totally transparent here. I do some part-time work for Flight, and I also help them package this instrument. It's just your standard blue TUSL, but I encourage them to put the kids' ukulele strings on them. You get a second set of strings, which, because schools don't get funding for string changes most of the time, it comes with that extra set of strings. And the little booklet in there, I helped with the text in that. So I do have connections here. I do not get a royalty for that. I do have continuing working conditions with Flight. The other thing that we did is we actually had requested, because we have a large school district. I think we serve, I'll just round it up, we serve nearly 20,000 students in Minnesota. We're the 6th largest school district in Minnesota, so we're a big school district. Now, compared to out east in the United States, that's not so big, but in the Midwest, that's a pretty big school district. We have 3 high schools. One of the schools has a color that's blue. The main color is green. The other main color is black or gold. So with that in mind, we didn't want to do a colored top. And Flight had arranged for us to get acacia model kids, basically just a long neck acacia top. And somewhere along the lines, the music store that we bought these from, we used a local music store that's a Flight store, talked with our upper education people the people with purchasing and the people making those decisions of purchasing, and instead of waiting for the acacia models to come, which would have taken a little longer, they decided to just outfit, and working with Hal Leonard, who was the distributor of Flight at the time, they decided to do all blue and then just let the acacia ones arrive. So, at Hal Leonard, which is Flight's former distributor but still sells some Flights that are remaining, there is a whole shipment of TUSL with acacia and colored strings and the extra strings waiting to be purchased, and they're not advertised anywhere. So if you are a school or a person looking for, sort of a great school model that isn't the blue color, they're there at Hal Leonard. All you got to do is request them and they can be ordered for you. So just do keep that in mind. All right, second one. I've seen your tips about lefties. Can you also reverse the colored strings on a TUSL? And the answer is yes. And you can do that on any ukulele. The TUSL does have a compensated saddle, although there may be other models that don't. Flight has changed that from time to time in the year, or over the years with that. If you flip them, the intonation may not be exactly perfect, but let's be honest, you're playing on the upper, you know, if you get to the fifth fret, you're doing pretty well. And my students do um, that bar chord as a warm up every day that we play ukuleles. So they do go up to the fifth fret, but very rarely do we get up above that. And that's where that intonation become even more critical. So yes, you can flip them. There are plenty of companies that don't compensate their saddles at all. And even with a compensated saddle, you'll be okay. Yes, it'll work. Quite honestly, when you're tuning a set of 40 or less, I tune 40. So when you have, all these kids playing ukulele, even though the intonation when you start is very, very close, because I use my Jawum Smart Tuner, highly, highly, highly recommended to tune 40 ukuleles in no time. Even though you have that, when the kids start playing, the intonation is going to be all over, the chords are going to be all over. You're not going to notice it. So for your lefties, you can flip. And if you're listening to this podcast for the first time and you're wondering, what are you talking about, lefties? I give my students the choice. They can learn righty, they can learn lefty, because we have 4 instruments of a set of 40 that are tuned lefty, or they can play righty as a lefty. If you watch Alex at SUS, the Southern Ukulele Store, he demos all the time as a left-hander playing a right-handed instrument as a lefty, and he does it that way. I've had no student choose that third option, but I do have right now in all of my 5th grade classes, I've got 4 students using left hand, and that's fine. And they are doing fine. A friend of mine, Paul Marchese, who runs a website, I believe it's called Ukuleles for Education. He's down in Illinois. He talks about the fact that if students that are left-handed think about the chord shapes as looking through their ukulele from this direction, then they can think of where their fingers go on the strings. Great way to think about it. So that's how I deal with lefties. And yes, you can string pretty much any ukulele that doesn't have a cutaway or electronics lefty, even if the saddle is compensated. If you want to get really specific, you could replace the saddles, but I don't think for your situation it's going to be that important. Next one, the flight models have a rounded back. Do your students react whether or not they're slipping? The answer has been no. Most of them are small enough that they can put it on their lap anyway as they play. For me, that doesn't work. I have to hold it, but even I can hold it. And I do teach them early on how to hold it with their strumming hand so that their wrist is doing the motion. And when you're holding it that way, it doesn't slip that bad. We have always been ready to order some straps. Like Flight makes a strap that goes, you get the little strap attachment up here, and then you've got the strap button that comes on every flight. I've been ready to do that if necessary. If I had to, I could drill and put a strap button on each one of our ukuleles. I could do that, so the strap could be attached that way as well, but we haven't needed to do that. Incidentally, don't do that with an instrument under warranty. On some flights like this, travels, what I've done is I've drilled the pilot hole, and then I take my strap button, and I put super glue in the hole, put super glue on the screw, and I put super glue on the bottom of the strap button. And then I make sure it's drilled in, and I screw it in, and I let it set, and that strap button is pretty much never coming off. And there is a gap here, so it just goes in and it holds and it firms. So between the super glue that's on the bottom of the strap button and the super glue on the threads and the super glue in the hole, it's not going anywhere. Again, don't glue your fingers together. That happens. CA glue, I think, is what they call in other parts of the world. Number 4, why don't you choose the Enya? There are 2 potential Enyas that he could be talking about. One is he could be talking about the Enya Nova U. He could also be talking about like an Enya laminate. This one is the EUC 200A that is now sold in the United States by Parapol. And both of them are affordable concert ukuleles. Ultimately, we could have gone with the Enyas. The Enya, though, has one problem that is tough for a school setting. Some students buy these because they see me bring this in, although I haven't brought one in for a long time. In the recent comparison video that I made between this and the close concert, I mentioned that my son, my 15-year-old son, has basically taken over control of this instrument and plays it occasionally in his room. So I'm going to encourage that 100%, and I just have not played this one. The Enya Nova, first of all, does have a very narrow nut, and it does impact me. I was just playing it for the comparison. I was surprised at how much it does. After I played it for a while, it doesn't, but that's one thing that's true. And the second is I was allowed to destroy one of these instruments. If you look on the website here, you'll find one called the Franken Enya, or if you look on the UkeStuff YouTube channel, you'll find the Franken Enya, which I glued back together. But I was sent by Enya a model to see how it survived. And what I found out is that when the Enya landed right on its screw down here, it broke. I also had a tenor, the Tenor Pro, that dropped onto concrete and the whole top popped off and it broke down there. I was able to glue that one as well. So they're fixable, but then they're no longer pretty in any way. So that little bit of fragility and knowing how students drop things kept me from that. And I, unfortunately, know from experience, have watched outdoor ukuleles drop and they don't break. I imagine the ultra travel from flight would probably not break. Wood ukuleles get broken all the time. And the flight has had some challenges too. So that's what kept me from the Enya Nova. As for the other Enyas, like a laminate Enya, have a ton of respect for Enya as a company. I love them very much. And this one, again, is carried by Parapole in the United States exclusively. But with any laminate with a wooden neck, although it does have a rich light fretboard, they are still susceptible to low humidity, even as a laminate. They are much more resilient, but they're also more subject to damage. So we were looking at instruments that were a little more resilient than a laminate ukulele. So that's going back to the previous discussion. Now, let me add one more thing getting the flight here. I've seen now with 41 flight models. One I had to already decommission, although there's something that I've learned since that may not have caused me to decommission it. But a couple things is we've had a couple that end up with a warping neck a little bit. I think we've got two, so the string action is really high. And I can combat that by later lowering the saddle. I just haven't had the time or a day just to do that. So that's one thing. The second one is we've had a number of kids drop these. And for the most part, they handle drops just fine. Just fine. Better than a wooden ukulele would. Other than maybe the Dolphin, because those seem to be sort of impervious to destruction. I had to break one of those apart as well, and that was a fight to break it apart. What's happened on a couple in our school district, so of the 640 of these that we purchased, we've had a number that have popped out right here, and when you take them apart, there's just really thin bracing that rests on top. So there's just a little bit of glue and thin bracing here. That probably needs to be redesigned. But on a second one that's recently happened to, where if it hits right here, it pops out the top and then, the string force pulls it up. What I've done is I took JB Weld and put it into the hole and glued it all back together and, taped it down so it's flush, and that has held. So it's repairable. That's good. That's important. And we're also seeing with this unfinished top, because that wash, it's a blue wash finish. It's not a sealed finish. We're also getting wear on our flights. So that is another thing to consider. That's another reason why I wish we would have waited for the acacia tops, because that is sort of a finish on the top. And I do allow my students to use picks, leather picks that we provide for them so that they don't bleed, and that's a whole nother story. So that's why we didn't choose the Enya models. I do think that the Enya can slip too with the surface, but if you chose those, I wouldn't be totally against that. In fact, I'm not against you choosing whatever instrument. I would steer you away from certain models, certain brands, but even then I'm not probably going to publicly say that because I don't want to shame anybody for what they own. I mean, if you're going to go for the Andinova, that's fine. The price point was higher too for what you're getting compared to the flight travel as well. And I do think, and I don't know how the tuning is here, I do think that the flight travel sounds better than the Andinova just as an instrument. And don't get me wrong, the Andinova is fine, but I do think that the flight travels do sound better. Let's see, continuing on. Do your students use a strap with the flight ukuleles? No. The disadvantage is I have to spend some time constantly having to adapt it to the student. Yeah, that's probably true. I did find a website here in the United States, Legacy Straps, that sold straps to us, just plain black ukulele straps. When I was using straps at the middle school level, I gave students the option to use a strap, and there were a few that would go do it, and I would just have the straps out. If you have a student that needs a particular strap, I would just go and adjust it for them and let them use that as their strap. It'd be part of what they would pick it out. So if you're going to have to spend the money for a strap for a student that can't hold the ukulele or needs assistance holding the ukulele, I would just assign that strap to them. And if need to, I would contact the parents and say, hey, I need you to get this strap. The flight straps are very affordable. They're a little thicker than I like, but that's okay, just by a little bit. I like a 1-inch strap. I think the flight straps are like 1.5 inches. Or you could find another supplier. I don't know if Legacy Straps will ship to the Netherlands or not, but it's worth checking out. So with that, continuing on, the Enya has 2 strap buttons for a strap. Can I drill a second strap button on the flight? And the answer is yes. I've already talked about that. You can, just I wouldn't do it if you expect the warranty period. And where I would put it is right on the back of this little, flat spot on the back of the ukulele. And I would drill it as high as you can. I'd mark it where the strap button would still be within that circle, but so you can get the strap over it, because there's that slot in the strap. If you put the strap button too far down, you can't get the strap underneath it. All right. Now, despite plastic is fantastic, I love wood. But good beginner ukuleles that aren't that expensive are hard to find. I saw on Amazon a left-handed Acklot 23 Concert, an Acklot Soprano Electric. What do you think of teaching children with different brands? I am all for students bringing their own instruments. I think for sake of replacement and sake of appearance in a room, I like having a unified set of ukuleles that are the same. It also saves, this sounds really crazy, maybe students in the Netherlands aren't like that, but in the United States, students will fight over colors and things. I believe in reducing pain points. So if you are a person who wants to avoid kids bleeding, use a pick. If you have a student that's having a hard time holding an ukulele, get a strap. If you are a person that wants to help students learn how to locate chords without using the stickers, get the colored strings. By the way, regardless of what any company you buy, you can get the Aquila kid strings. They're going to be cheapest directly from Aquila in a 20-pack, and they sell them to schools at a very affordable rate. You cannot get any strings, even fishing line, for the same price that you can get the kids' Aquila strings directly from Aquila. So with that in mind, you do you. There's a saying here in the United States that's sort of viral. That's the "you do you boo" statement, which is ultimately you do what's going to work best for you. So if you've got to put together I started off with a set of Mahalo MK1 TBS butterscotch ukuleles, which were the cheapest functioning ukuleles I could find when I was teaching middle school, and they were selling for around $25 a piece, shipping included from Amazon. And that's how I started teaching ukulele. Then I moved to caramel ukuleles, and then I was able to move to the flights when our district allowed us to buy them for all of our schools. So you start with what you can get. If you can start with the flights, that's great. Or if you need a in-class wood ukulele, something like the Enya is definitely a step up of some of the other brands. I personally like Acklot a lot. I really like the bamboo ukulele they offer. However, the prices I think have gone up on that, and I have seen some people that have some negative reviews of the construction of the Acklot ukuleles. And those are people whose opinion matter to me that have had those negative statements. I do know that Rachel Wembley, who runs the Ukuleleans website and Ukulele Wales website on YouTube, Rachel has an entire class set of camise ukuleles. So if you're interested, you can check out what she's written about that. You do what works for you. So I want one brand, one color, so that students don't fight over them, because otherwise they will. And again, reducing pain points wherever I can. And with that, I think that summarizes all of the questions that were in that email, and I wanted to answer them in a longer format. And if you are a teacher or someone looking to support a school in their ukulele endeavors, maybe some of those answers help you as well. And do again remember that I have connections with flight, so my positivity towards flight is not only rooted in my experience, but it is also connected to the fact that I do work for them part-time in a role of customer service and educational consultant. So do, listen to my words with that in your mind as well. In future podcasts, I'll be going back to interviews with people. I've been asking, for example, on Ukulele Underground, which sort of people should I reach out to. I've tried to reach out to loosely some celebrities like William H. Macy with no reply yet. I'll keep trying. Don't know if that will ever happen. But continuing to want to interview about once a month or do a podcast about once a month with people of interest to me, people that are of interest to ukulele education, people that are interested in the ukulele world in general, and to share those interviews with you. All right, so thanks so much for joining me for the podcast. Thank you much if you're watching the video. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll be back soon with some more Uke stuff for you.